What's up, Metaverse? My name is Clarama. I'm really excited to talk to you guys all today about VR beyond gaming. So I have with me here two really cool guests, Dilan, Shah, and Marlon Fuentes. I'm personally very inspired by both of these people in the space. I think the whole purpose of the show today is really just to talk about all the different exciting use cases that exist in VR beyond gaming. And Dilan and Marlon have been in this space for since like 2015 or 2016, or at least that. Yeah. And so pretty, I think that's pretty veteran space for this like new age wave of VR and VR becoming industrialized in this market space. So, and you guys have all been in different places. So again, I'm affiliated with them through Oculus Launchpad. Dylan's been a close friend of mine, and Marlon has been a really strong acquaintance with me online, to the point where I actually thought we were physical friends, but apparently I just learned that was not the case. But I gotta love online communities. Yeah. Anyway, so I felt like I've hung out with you, Marlon, so many times, but apparently, yeah. But anyway, so with that said, they both have really exciting backgrounds. Marlon, I know you came into Oculus Launchpad. I think your year was 2018, and you did some work, and I think you were doing VR for BuzzFeed back then. And you since then, I know you've probably been other places, but I particularly remember meeting you when you had been working at the Grammys and doing a lot of really cool work for them in the space. And then now you're at a really, really cool startup doing 3D holograms and media. But I've always known you as like a 360 media video, like VR kind of person, which I'm not really that familiar with outside of the basic Samsung gear. And then Dilan, he's been like in the space pioneering the health and tech intersection of VR. And he's just super passionate about health and in general and technology that can help us like really be in more control over our health and their quality of life in that way. And so I've always been inspired from that regards. I'm not a health person. I don't work out. But I love VR. And so to even see VR have that level of impact in a way that would help me engage in more fitness practices, I feel like I've always enjoyed learning from you. And he's the founder of YUR, which has also been a huge pioneer in the VR space. I think you guys were the first to introduce like a calorie tracker in VR, and like leveraging VR to like really quantify your health status and be able to monitor that while you're working out in ways that I don't think any other technology has been able to do. So anyways, with that said, I'd love to like learn from both of you. I'll start with you, Marlon, if it's okay. Like what your background before you came into VR, and what made you interested in coming to VR? Like what was the thing that grabbed you into the space?
Yeah, so I remember working at a theater company right around like 2012, 2013. It was a nonprofit, small arts organization. And at the time, I knew and I could feel that there was this great wave of technology coming our way, and every acronym you can think of, right, just fill it in. But the one thing that I gravitated towards that I felt was accessible to me, both my parents are journalists. I come from a bit of a media background, literally from the womb, was virtual reality. And I remember backing a Kickstarter for a plastic cardboard. I don't know if you remember the ones that like had the little like elastic thing that like went over, and it like lasted a lot longer than the actual cardboard one. It's exciting for me. I remember, yeah, right, exactly.
Nice.
So I remember getting it, and I remember the first time, and this was like Android only, so like I had to like find somebody that had an Android phone and put it in, and I put it on, and I was like, oh shit, okay, this is what we're doing. And from then I just started going to meetups, and really what was cool about it was that, everybody, and of this new wave was fairly new, and so we were all making ugly babies, at that time. I think, it was really,
a lot of us still are.
I mean, after that came the, Ricoh Theta camera, and then after that, I spent like, my tax return on like a GoPro set up with the Freedom 360 rig, and I just started going for it. And so, really those were my humble beginnings, and just going out and shooting what I could, the stories that I thought were important, working with, some of the nonprofits that I had worked with in the past, to document their neighborhoods, the Women's March, things that really mattered, and that's how I began my journey with VR. but the journey continues, and we're exploring multiple facets of that now. But that was really sort of the impulse was, let me just poke at this. Oh, that's pretty cool. Welcome here. Oh, let's dig in further, and really just kind of progressing from there. And thankfully, so many people like yourselves that have welcomed people like me into the space that don't come from a computer science background, don't come from
traditional, whatever that means anymore.
So it was really fun time.
Yeah, I love that. So it sounds like it was a very instant, like, kind of, you were in theater, it sounds like, for a while. So were you originally going to be doing like theater work, like before VR came into your life? Was that the plan? Okay.
I did my undergrad in ethnomusicology at UCLA, which basically means good luck.
Wait, you were at UCLA too? Yeah, Dylan?
Yeah, USC.
Oh, USC. Okay, sorry.
Basically, that is a sick major. That sounds like it's actually worth studying.
It was a lot of fun, but I think the career prospects for people that come out of like art programs oftentimes is sort of the nonprofit arts space, and so that that's kind of where I got started, which really kind of translated to a lot of skills in a more of a startup lean kind of environment. You have to be very resourceful and inventive to, especially in theater. That's a very interesting group of people to work with. And I'm a marketing manager, so I was there thinking about ways to really get our work out. But it was something that I knew at the time I wanted to get closer to, and just in general, like I felt like there was a lot of really, really interesting technology coming our way that I wanted to learn to utilize at that time.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Dylan? What was your pathway going into VR? What were you doing before, and what made you interested in like committing your life to, or at least right now? Yeah.
At least this period of my life, who knows what comes next, but so much jumps out at me from listening to Marlon, like, hark back to like the first experiences. I know I for sure like come from like a background where like my atomic family unit is like the only non-doctor related like by profession type of backgrounds, and I had an early infatuation with programming and took advantage of that fact when I was like thinking about how I'd make an impact, and then my family uproots, just kind of like thinking about health in general, and like, why is it that so many of like our biggest chronic events, like heart attacks and strokes, are like preventable in certain senses? And I thought I was going to work on that for a long time, and I had to say that like being in the right place at the right time and having witnessed the swap to like an Android phone and like being able to check out Samsung Gear VR similar to Marlon, and like similar, basically like taking interest in people who are writing editorial content, like at VR Scout in like the really early days in Los Angeles during my days at USC, establishing a student group and like kind of like just like following curiosity had really established the formation of VR as a centerpiece and like what I wanted to do professionally. And so I can remember with like clear enthusiasm, even seeing like Euphoria, which is not necessarily VR, but it's more like iPad AR at the time with like an image target. And just being like taken in by like how like you could turn a 3D object on a 2D screen, and it's not dissimilar to like where Looking Glass is at now, right? Like you have like a 2D display that's very easy to engage with other people with, and something about that clicked for me. Like, and I was able to pursue the understanding of how games are built, and like sort of see that it's extremely cross-functional. Like you have to have the art component, you have to have the programming component, you have to have the character design, you have to think about sound, and it's gonna take somebody with that personality type who can see things from different facets and relate to different people, like Marlon can with live acting, and his experience there. That makes it like fascinating, and I think like just being able to see early glimpses at huge potential, even though it was like 3 degrees of freedom and very rudimentary, is what captivated me. and then like through the successive years, I've had to remain adaptable around use case. My North Star was kind of like health and wellness. And so like kind of, my journey zigzagged a little bit, but always kind of like just super fascinated and passionate about this. And like I showed just now, I still have like, my like magnetic ring cardboard.
Yeah, I have mine's up there, and then I have a whole bunch of them downstairs in the living room, like a little shrine to all my Google YouTube cardboards, because they were like flooded, especially in the last year when once the headset started coming out, like then everyone was just giving them away. But yeah, so I love that point that you made too. Like you guys were both, so Marlon, you were in the world building, like real world physical world building career in terms of theater, and you, Dylan, were attracted to world building in general, like the idea of VR being able to build, to stimulate you to like learn and be challenged, and to draw on a generalist, I feel like, skill sets to build different components to make up one big piece. That's what it sounds like. Yeah. So, and that's interesting because you guys are in both different like applications of VR now. So I could say like, so tell me a little bit about what you do now, and go ahead, like Marlon, what is the work that you're doing now? Where you currently at, and what are you building today? And for whatever you can share, and also where are you based?
Sure. Yeah. So I actually just moved to New York from Los Angeles to work at Looking Glass Factory, based here in Brooklyn and Hong Kong. And we develop a hologram system. Hardware. We have a Looking Glass portrait, a 4K display and an 8K display. And these are systems that are utilized by 3D professionals, people that are working in a variety of fields on 3D. And so pretty exciting stuff. I think for me especially, I've always been very like platform agnostic. Really just kind of focused on like the experience and the adaptability of different platforms for different use cases and different people. And so what's cool about the Looking Glass is that you can have groups of people enjoying 3D content together. And it's a really, really fun technology. I invite anybody to check out lookingglass.com to kind of take a look at lookingglassfactory.com to take a look at how this light field display works. But essentially it is a tool, and it's an exciting time now with digital art having this huge moment, and lots of artists kind of packaging their art with these different devices and kind of customizing how they're shipping them out to people. And so I think it adds kind of the tangible side to this, but also for use cases like drug discovery, computational chemists, people that are working on engineering, that have a team that needs to work with 3D content. This is a really cool device. But my work is centered around the creative community. So, like my former job at the Grammys, I've always been in service of creative communities, and really helping people utilize our platform, and kind of taking down any sort of barriers to entry. So I'm excited, and I think, especially considering sort of how I'm really a product of community, because I didn't start out anywhere remotely close to technology, like high technology. I very much was someone that kind of knocked on the door, and was thankfully welcomed into different spaces. And hackathons, is a big part of my journey. I mean, I would say meetups, hackathons, and digital communities, folks like yourselves that, return a message,
the online connection. Yeah.
So we hope to do that as well for folks.
Okay, yeah, I love that. So just to like capitalize, I don't know if that's the right word, but it sounds like, so you're not in a, would you say are you in a technical role at your company, or you're not in a technical role? And so, yeah.
So I am like part of the CX team, so we do a lot of troubleshooting with the community. So I'm not the technical specialist per se, I'm in like a specifically technical role. But, to be fully transparent and perhaps even vulnerable, like it was important for me to be as close as possible to the technical folks. That was my goal. Like, one of the big reasons why I made this career jump out to New York was to get closer to the source. You know, to work like next to a designer, next to an engineer. I get to see, you know, what's happening in manufacturing, you know. So for me, this is all kind of a part of a bigger plan, you know. And so for folks that are thinking about getting into the space, that, you know, might be, you know, shooting for a technical role at some point, you know, I can only share my story as someone that has now, you know, moved into a more relational role in the organization, but that definitely has like technical aspirations, and every time I go to a hackathon, you know, I'm very much reminded of like the skills that I want to build on. So
I think that's
doing that.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you, but I definitely feel like I love that perspective specifically because I also get a lot of people asking about, like, I don't have any technical skills. Can I work in this space? And I think when you think about VR, it's very implicit in the name that it's a technical field. And so I think a lot of people who don't have those skills, who are really excited about the technology, either A, get intimidated by that and assume that there's not a place for them in it, or two, become misguided thinking that they have to be technical in order to find a lucrative career in this space. And so therefore they either start learning something that they may not actually be passionate about, rather than leveraging their gifts. For example, you already said you had a passion for community and creating communities, that this is a world building technology. It's a technology rebuilding world. Therefore, people who have these skills, especially when it comes to integrating this technology into communities and putting it into people's hands, it requires people with soft skills, with people who understand how to, you know, shape this technology in a way that people can adopt it, know how to use it, feel comfortable with it, especially when the technology in itself can be very intimidating. So I think that was just a great story to have, and a great model to share with others. And then you've been in very big places too, like at BuzzFeed VR. Like, I mean, we'll dig into that later, but I feel like you did some really exciting stuff. And I think for people who are coming to the space who may not have a technical drive, just know that if you're interested, there's already something for you here, and you should definitely keep digging, which is good contrast into Dilan, because I think, Dilan, you do actually come from a technical background. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is like you have a computer science degree, but now you're an entrepreneur. And how does that, but you know, and I think you also have a passion for community. So how did you leverage that, and what does that look like in terms of being in this space now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's worth noting that I specifically got into programming at a very young age. That I think perhaps connected the dots later on that, like, you know, once you have like pretty good foundations in object-oriented programming, or like understanding one programming language, that model is conventional and can be like sort of spread to like pick up new skills. But that being said, like when you look at your first 3D viewport, whether that's Unreal Engine, Unity, or like Lens Studio, Spark AR, there are varying levels of stages of anxiety where it's like, how do I get started here? How do I engage with this interface? And something great that generally connects the dots on what y'all were just talking about is that you don't have to be technical, like I might be. There's so many WYSIWYG, like you can like click and drag notes, or just generally, like I happen to think that like so many of the templates that are out there afford you such a demonstrable leg up. And one of the notes that might be a little bit counterintuitive I was going to make, especially for those of the viewers that are watching, is like you do not need a boot camp. You need like a degree service to start to unearth like some of like the basic templates. Like you can just like click around and like start to tinker and walk through these things. And sometimes I'm thinking in the modality of like building VR and AR applications, just because I've professionally been consulting on that the past 5 years or so. But you know, some of these things, like you mentioned, Chloe, how like people are innately interested and charged up from a passion standpoint, because there's something unique about like AR and VR where it's like anyone literally can think about use cases. Anyone can imagine what would be really freaking cool, right? So that's where like it starts. And I think like tugging on what feedback loops that these pieces of software out there can provide is a good way of like just getting to that We talked about ugly babies earlier in terms of projects. Can I just tell you that at some point in 2017, in a Microsoft Hollow Hacks project, I made a Yu-Gi-Oh! Animated character appear out of like a surface in like a couple days, and it looked terrible, right? Like the whole point was that I didn't have to code any of the plane detection, and like it was an animation that played, so it really didn't have any programming. It just had these things called keyframes, right? Where you over time you discern like what part of a transform needs to be where a transform being like X, Y, and Z coordinate needs to be where, and then you click play, and then the thing pops up,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point too. Like, cause, and by the way, I know I'm gonna be mindful of time. We have 2 minutes to 12. Would you guys be able to stay 10 minutes past, or do you like? Okay, okay, cool, thank you. Okay, so I definitely want to, cause I also really want to understand the health and tech space from your perspective as well, and like what the impacts look like. But I will say, like, to kind of give evidence to your story, I came into VR in grad school, and when I experienced it for the first time, my excitement around it was like how I think it was going to transform training. I was like, oh, we can definitely, like, in terms of my experience at the time, I was dealing with what I felt like was bias in my graduate degree. I felt like I was not treated the same that my peers were getting treated, and I felt like I was under more scrutiny. And so, but I didn't necessarily have hard evidence outside of like anecdotes and statements and like actions that are like become like my word against the other person's word if I'm trying to hold someone accountable. So when I saw VR, I was like, oh, I can easily recreate this experience and have someone experience what I've been experiencing, and I can share that with others in a way that and it can and in a way that could also be quantifiable. And then so like I looked at it as like that application, not thinking about games and just wanting to build it. And I used YouTube to start building and start tinkering with it. Like I just watched YouTube videos, how to make a VR experience, how to make a room. And then like I saw these videos and I will just follow it along. And that was enough for me. And I don't even think I used code for my first project. It was literally, like you said, just those plug and play of interactions and having something, a prototype. Yeah. But so yeah,
we call them ugly babies because we love them even though they're imperfect. And I think that's the key, because with all of these things, perfect just didn't, especially when you're starting out, it just doesn't exist. But if you care, and it's something that you and your heart believe needs to get made, whether it's like, diversity bias training, health, and wellness training, stories of people underrepresented, you can do it no matter what.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah, the fact that it's functional, the fact that you got something to work, and in this space there is no real, like there are very few polished examples. So really, if you just made something work, people are like, oh my gosh, that's cool. Like now is the time. It's Ugly Baby's Day.
We're actually at an SBVR hackathon in like 2015. This guy John Noakes told me, like, just try to take your, like, it was like my first game jam or something like that.
Yeah.
He was like, just try and take the project across the finish line.
So that's like, we can do a whole other talk on that. Like we got a little bit of a sense of like your space, Marlon, and a little bit about the 3D holograms. That's so interesting. And like, I think a little bit about the media work. I'd love to know, like, from you, and actually from both of you, but I'll start with you, Dilan. What's the most impactful thing you've seen about VR, particularly in the health and wellness space? Like, what's the impacts there that look like? What should people be excited about there, or how, like as a person who has no idea that VR can have health impacts, what does that space look like, and where do you have any like success stories there, or what does the impact look like?
100%. Like I think like there's a pretty easy way of kind of like breaking this out. There's healthcare with a capital H, and there's like health with a lowercase h and wellness that like happens outside of maybe a clinical environment, maybe not interacting with patients or physicians. And I think you're seeing very strong and ever growing set of success stories around use of VR training in the surgical, the surgical context. So you have also, which is kind of a leader in this space. And I think like there's more formal oversight there. You have more quantification around like the percentage increase in recall or effectiveness in it actually, if you zoom out, it's the same sort of criteria that you see for training applications in other industries too. Also VR would be one to check out specifically. And then on the subject of like post-traumatic stress disorder, I would love to sort of get that perspective from you, Chloe, because I feel like you've seen some demos out of Stanford's V-Hill. And I know there's a number of academic institutions that are publishing on the topic of exposure therapy. That is like a pretty long held use case, same with pain reduction, right? So like this idea that if you have a burn, you do not need to take some sort of invasive therapeutic, like orally or otherwise intravenously, but you can like wear a VR headset and have your pain reduction values like actually quantified. So those are two like big use cases that I can see. Then obviously outside of the clinic, you've got things like Trip VR, which is, you know, meditation and sort of like experiences where you're thinking maybe about breath control. And I've even seen that in AR with Snap, they recently did like one or two of like earliest like, you know, spectacle lens creators has done something with breath and sort of and modulation through breath control with a visual feedback system, right? And so like that's kind of like a transition into what we do at YUR. When you're engaging with a VR or AR system, like there's so much real-time data being exposed, right? You have positional coordinates, you have linear and angular acceleration and velocity. You have sometimes finger tracking, maybe even eye tracking. And so now we know more about like the body and space in real time, and that can also inform the visual layer. So to get precisely to the ever-changing landscape, I focus on fitness at YUR, and I'm seeing that like actually there's fitness benefit to not only the rhythm game section as a category has taken off in terms of fitness value, but there's also like long form, like, you know, metaverse platforms, if you will, the rec rooms, VR chats, and commercial landscape that just tend to have longer dwell time because of social belonging. Social belonging outside the clinic is actually super good for our health, right? We need to feel belonging, and that's actually a health topic. It actually helps people adhere to new health regimes and fitness regimes. So for those who care about the non-clinical side, I think that's really interesting to point out as maybe an undersung hero here is like social VR experiences for health. Like it's not overtly for health, but like you got people who haven't had physical connection because of whatever circumstance, getting that, you know, emotional needs satisfied. I'd love to see specifics around those delivery methods, but I don't really have anything to share on that front. And then finally, in the context of like if you're going to lose weight, calorie burn and sort of like your input output is still like one of the best ways to kind of gauge that. And so our company kind of focuses on taking that movement data and like producing population scale, precise and accurate models around like how much calorie you know, activity is being done in any of these sort of games, right? And so yeah, I mean, go into there.
Yeah, that's personally for me. Like again, like I said, I'm not a gym goer, but I do like to just be active naturally, and so for me, the thing that pulls me back into VR is my favorite games are Beat Saber, Dead and Buried, like Shootout, and also Racket NX right now. Racket Fury NX, I think it's Racket NX or Racket Fury. I think that's the same. I don't know. It's Racket NX. Okay, yeah, the one where you're like, it's like tennis, but like supercharged, like craziness. Anyways, so like I feel like the thing that kind of gets me back to like, oh, not only can I play games, but knowing that I could also lose like calories, like this is actually going to give me the activity and the movement that I haven't gotten sitting on my desk all day, is like that's been exciting. And I've actually lost weight using like that kind of method. There was I think it was a week during last year during the politics, like the elections, that I think I gained 10 pounds from stress. And then it just playing Beat Saber for 45 minutes every day that rest of the month, like I lost it that fast too. So I think that to me is like really exciting about how VR can really just integrate gaming as like a fitness or like a healthy activity thing that I don't know, and that allows me to also stay at home and not have to like pay gym membership or whatever. But And so that's what I really love about your space, and the thing that you guys have brought to VR to enable large communities to really get that level of feedback in their gameplay, and to be able to start managing that.
I may maybe to pack one piece on about the community aspect. Experience is designed for the use of patients versus people who are just using VR recreationally. Very different.
Yes,
topics.
yes.
Obviously, a lot of oversight in one of those contexts, which would be FDA approval. So in governance of what's going to be acceptable in a clinical context. But we don't focus on that. We're more population centric, which is outside the clinic. And I guess for us, one of the reasons why community goes back to a point you made earlier about rooting yourself in the experience of a novice or maybe someone older. Community gives us that without even trying, because looking forward to the next thing that we put out, and I want to try it, and we have empathy for people from all walks of life that don't understand the X for the Y button. You're you say, what's the X button? They're not going to know. The X button is this right here. So designing for those affordances is really critical, and having a community helps with that.
Yeah, to get that feedback. That's legit. And then what about you, Marlon? Media, what are some examples that you think people should look at when they're looking from your particular lens, for the type of work you're doing? It sounds like you mentioned 3D artists a bit, you mentioned media stuff. What are the exciting things that you see in those particular spaces and the work you're doing? And how can people keep in touch as well?
Yeah, well, I definitely had time in my life when I was studying design. I was making posters for the theater. One thing that I would encourage all designers to do is to start thinking in 3D. This is a really great way to kind of segue into applications for 3D, whether it's VR, AR, or a holographic interface, right? So looking at tools like Medium, looking at really simple things like Google Blocks, for example, which is one of my favorite sort of primitive shape modeling tools.
R.I.P. Google Blocks. Fortunately.
But yeah, looking at all these different applications to design and to create in 3D, you can take all of those things and bring them into a holographic display, or into a VR headset, or into an AR experience. So definitely there, and also for photographers, I think that we're kind of entering this new era of photography and image making, where things have volume, and things are not just simply flat. So for photographers out there, thinking about light field photography, and how you can use a camera slider to get 48 plus views of an object, and render them in a quilt format, which is what we use to project a holographic image. This is all achievable now. So we even have on our Discord folks that are DIYing their own light field cameras with a bunch of different cameras. So it's a really, really interesting time for 3D creators, but also for photographers. And of course we have all of our colleagues that are interested in volumetric video right now. Shout out to Christina and Metastage, folks that are capturing really, really cool artists and celebrities in those spaces. But also, if you have a Microsoft Kinect, you can get started, and you can very soon you'll be doing a lot of this stuff just with your iPhone. You actually already can take Polycam or Record 3D or any one of these different applications to start shooting volumetric video. So it's a pretty exciting time to be a creative person, and I think for us really it's just encouraging people to create, and then this is just one of many different outlets for your 3D work. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's amazing. For those who don't know what light field is, for what volumetric is, what would you describe that? It sounds like these are new new ways to capture or record, and what are those particular types?
So basically, the way that our interfaces work is by projecting and pumping out light and image, right, from all these different views, and so you get the perspective of a 3D image, looking at from different perspectives, at this interface. And so what a light field is basically taking many, many different views of something and projecting it all out.
Kind of like sonar, but instead of sound, you're using light. And then so then you're getting it, the feedback you get is like the picture of the object that the light just hit.
Right, exactly. So it's in a very simple way. I mean, it's almost like when you look at an object, you're actually seeing the light, reflecting off of it, right?
Yeah.
So this way is computer driven, right? So it's an interface that's projecting all these different views of a particular object or scene, so that it appears as a 3D image in front of you. So this is all really exciting stuff, and again, I have the same sort of curiosity and enthusiasm that I had when I started. I'm myself on my own learning journey still. I'm taking courses for 3D. I'm just excited as always, and I encourage people to start their own journey, to reach out to any one of us, for help. I'm always so happy when somebody hits me up and asks the question, oh, how do I get started, or what's this like?
Yeah. Okay. What are the ways? What is like an example of the most exciting way that you've seen this technology being used? Like, what does a light feel like? What's something that at least for you was like, oh, that's really cool that you've seen it being used?
Sure. Yeah. I think for me, one of the really, really cool things that I'm excited to see is these things in museums, right? And for a lot of 3D artists to be able to share their work in a kind of frictionless way, right? Where groups of people can kind of walk up to one of these interfaces and kind of see these three-dimensional images. But also, I would say that one of the most exciting things for me is sort of the two-way communication that we'll have someday, where everybody has these like holographic displays, on their desk, and we can, call each other and view each other, in 3D. Yeah. That's something I'm really excited about. So currently I have, for example, on my desk, I have a looking glass portrait with a Kinect Azure camera like on top of it. So, just to kind of future, it's be really exciting.
So it's like a picture frame that like shows a video, but it's like 3D image of you in real time being able to speak. So like, unlike like the difference between like me seeing like a VC where right now like we're looking at each other, but it's very 2D video. This would be, you could do this but in 3D, exactly like this 3D. And so like you'll be able to see the depth of. Correct, oh, interesting. Yeah. Wow. So kind of like in Harry Potter when you see like when they go buy those paintings, I think those are 3D kind of stuff. Yeah.
I think during the pandemic I got like kind of hooked on watching Star Trek. Like I never really watched it before that. I think it was a little bit too much of an adult dialogue for when it was like running on TV when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
But a lot of those technologies that they're very speculative. On that show, I think these are the things that we're really building today.
Yeah.
So, when I think about the future now, I really do kind of remind myself that this is actually like happening right now. We're all a part of it, and like kind of far off. And really now it's a matter of just kind of getting people, to join us and to be part of it and help shape it and build it, so that they can reflect all of our lives. I love sharing images. So Instagram is a great way. At Marlon Fuentes on Instagram or Marlon Creative on Twitter, and I'm always happy to chat with folks. And if you're ever in Brooklyn, come on by. We'd love to give you a demo of the Looking Glass system. It's really fun stuff, and we're a cool group. So yeah, be really eager to connect with folks.
So how do people reach you? Like if they want to be part of YUR, is it YUR or YUR or how do you?
Yeah, it's
YUR. Okay. My bad. This whole time. I've been saying YUR.
Like, yeah. Your clothing, it is like also interchangeable with your.
Does it mean like YUR?
Our website is You're.energy.
Oh, interesting. Your energy. Okay, yeah. So okay, cool. So those are the ways people can get in touch with your platform, your community. Cool, exciting. Thank you guys so much for your time. This was really cool. I learned a lot. And I was like, and so yeah, I really appreciate you guys' like really great detailed explanations. And I think for, if for viewers watching today and who are new to this and are like, okay, this is a lot of information. Like, how do I make? What's the best thing to take away from this? I think the commonality that I think all three of us have here coming to this space is that we tried it first, and that trying it is kind of what was the impetus for us moving forward and navigating this landscape and finding the right place for us. And so I love that, you know, you got Marlon, you're working on this 3D experience, and so I'll put up links to like for people to maybe try that out, or and for also for YUR, I'm gonna post the links to our channel so they can check that out and see and get explore there, but also just in general, like just try whatever you guys can get your hands on, any demos, no matter like the scrappiness, like obviously Google Cardboard or whatever. Like, yeah, I think that's a great first start. Okay, great. And the world is endless. The possibilities are endless, and you can pioneer something. Your next ugly child. All right, thank you again so much, and see you later, Metaverse.
Thanks for holding space.
See ya.